Hi, Gene here with today's thought. Actually, two thoughts. So here's the first thought. I just noticed my hand here. There's dressing on it. So the first thought is if you do sous vide, if you don't know what sous vide is, that's a method of cooking. It's a method of slow cooking something that makes actually very tough cuts of meat, makes them tender. It's a big pot of water, a big tank of water, and there's a little device that goes in the water, and then you put what you want to cook. You seal it in a plastic bag. Ideally, you vacuum seal it in a vacuum sealing bag. You put that in the water, and then you turn this thing on, and it just circulates the water and cooks at maintains a very constant temperature for, well, you can sous vide something for up to 48 hours if you want to. It depends you have to look up on the internet the best temperature and cooking times. But here's the thought is that it says it's low temperature cooking, but that word low temperature is a little deceptive, maybe at 130 degrees or something, but I was doing something at 180 degrees. I knocked the tank and I spilled water on my hand, burned my hand. It's first degree burn. It's not serious. It just hurt like hell. I went to the doctor, though, just to be safe. He gave me some ointment on my hand, and then I have the dressing around my hand just so I don't get ointment all over everything. So I should be okay in a day or two. I'm also almost healed now. It's really just a sting. It activates your nerves, and it just hurts like hell, even though there's no damage to the skin. But it doesn't hurt as bad as it did. So that's thought number one for today is be careful about sous videing. Don't knock the tank. Put it on the table or wherever you put it on your counter, but push it well back and just be careful and don't try to move it after the water has come to temperature. Just leave it alone until you turn it off and then let it cool for several hours. The water, make sure it's absolutely cool. So that's it. That's my public service message for today. Thought number one. So now on to thought number two. The day I'm recording this, the day before you're seeing it, is the day before Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, is scheduled to give a speech to both houses of Congress. So already some Democrats are boycotting Democratic senators, representatives, at least, well, I don't know about senators, but definitely representatives. Bernie Sanders is not going to be there, and he will not be missed, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will not be there. But outside first of all, this says a lot about support for Israel. It used to be bipartisan. So I'm glad I'm no longer a Democrat. I left a long time ago. I could kind of see this coming and from a long time ago. It's coming to fruition. My prophecies are coming true. And now you're seeing more and more open hostility to Israel. And a lot of it is just politics. We have this election coming up. You have a large Arab community in Michigan, where I am from, by the way. There are enough Arabs now in Michigan to sway the election, to sway a close election. Remember, Florida you may not be old enough to remember, but I remember Florida, the 2000 election. That vote, Gore and George W. Bush, was so close. That entire election was decided by just about 500 votes in one state, Florida. So you can see how in a very close election, just a few votes could make a big difference. And that's why you have the Democratic Party or the people running for office. Well, Kamala Harris is on their side anyways, these idiots demonstrating if you're demonstrating against Israel about this war, the Gaza war, you are demonstrating for Hamas. You want them to win. And that is where the Democratic Party is today. And I don't know how you could be. There are actually Jews marching on the side of Hamas, which really blows my mind. But Alan Dershowitz, what I'm getting to today is there are already mass protests outside the the Capitol in Washington, D.C., these idiots marching around, and they are protesting Netanyahu's speech. So they are marching around, and one thing I believe I will be interested to see is, depending on what these people do, how close. Remember, I want to see if this will be treated as an insurrection, if these people attempt to disrupt Netanyahu's speech, which we have to understand the new definition of disruption, which is, because remember these January 6th people, you had people that rioted inside the Capitol building and were rightfully arrested. Those who did damage and threatened people and were violent. Okay. But you had a lot of people that were most of these people arrested were just standing outside. They were outside the Capitol, did not go in, did not threaten anybody. They just demonstrated, and they were arrested and charged with, all kinds of charges, except, disturbing the peace, rioting, but anything except an insurrection, even though our friends on the left we're calling it an insurrection. So if that is an insurrection, then it doesn't take much for these protesters now today, protesting Netanyahu, to cross that line, to fit that definition of insurrection. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But these people who were out there, here's another thought. I'm going to give you a little fashion tip today, okay? A little fashion tip. Now, when I was young and you had these demonstrators, they would wear the Che Guevara T-shirt. There is a new fashion trend that is going on among these protesters, among the Israel-hating youth, who I'm going to get to in a moment specifically, but the new fashion trend for them, which I actually saw in some people all the way back into the 1980s, believe it or not, into the 1970s, when I was still living in Detroit. And that's why I said I saw this coming from a mile away. I knew this was inevitable. And but the getting back to the world of fashion, so the new fashion is, here it is. I'll put up a photo for you. The keffiyeh. That is the new fashion trend, which is what this young lady is wearing. That's it, to show solidarity with Hamas, who is pledging genocide. It's in their charter. They want every Jew dead. Or maybe if they're in a generous mood, you can convert to Islam, which I will not be doing anytime soon, personally. But it would not surprise me if some of these people, these kids, it's just kids. I guess you get older and you just see these kids with these rebels without a cause. So they pick a cause, and that's their cause. And they have no idea, I think, what they're talking about. But you see that sign, globalize the Intifada. What does that mean? Now, the Intifada, in case you didn't know, that's Arabic for uprising. There were a couple in Israel, or against Israel, from Judea and Samaria and Gaza. Even though there are no Israel, there are now. Now there are a lot of Israeli soldiers in Gaza, but there hadn't been any there in Gaza since they left in 2005, but they are still calling themselves a resistance in Gaza, even though there's nobody there to resist. But the Intifada is a violent insurrection. If you're talking about, not an insurrection, violent attacks, violence, terrorism against Israel, against the only Jewish state, with the purpose of eliminating that state from the face of the earth. But also, as I just said, with Hamas, their goal in life, it's in their charter, their main reason for existence, which is to eliminate Jews all over the world. So when you're saying globalize the Intifada, that's exactly what you mean, which now brings me to the title of today's thought. This comes from, I was calling these people useful idiots because that's what they are. They're useful idiots. They're straight out of, they're the same people that Lenin, he coined the term useful idiots, that the capitalism, the West would hang, the capitalists would hang themselves with their own rope. The people who collaborate with with people who are bent on destroying you, collaborate with them. I don't know, in the Stockholm syndrome. No, that doesn't quite fit. But useful idiots. That's what I was calling them. But Alan Dershowitz, the famous attorney, Alan Dershowitz, came up with the real term, the better term. He calls them Hitler Youth. And that's the getting back to that fashion trend that I was talking about. Now, the original Hitler Youth, they wore brown uniforms. They were called brown shirts. That was the fashion trend of that day in the 1930s. And when you were talking about Kristallnacht, which was one night in the 1930s when there was just riots against Jews in Germany, where Jewish businesses were destroyed, were attacked, and we're seeing the same thing today in New York City. At least there are cases, or have been a few cases, of vandalism against Jewish businesses in Manhattan, which really makes me sad because I lived in New York for 41 years. Large Jewish, probably that's next to Israel, that is the largest Jewish population in the world, is in New York City. And to see that happening there, it's really shameful. Really, it distresses me to no end, because New York used to be a great, great city, and it's going into the decline, just like my hometown of Detroit. So I've seen this show before, so I know that what's going on there. And another reason not to be a Democrat, what Democrats are doing through a lot of big cities, all across San Francisco, Kamala Harris's hometown, right? So, and what she wants to do there, to the country, what Democrats did to San Francisco. I don't want to digress. That's another thought for another day. But Hitler Youth is the perfect description of these people who are marching, because that is what they're marching for. These are people that want me dead, and it really surprises me that there are actually Jews doing this. This is how much liberalism corrupts people. It's like being a black person and joining the Ku Klux Klan. It is exactly the same thing, and it is really sad to see. That's my thought for today. I'm recording this maybe 45 minutes, a half hour before Netanyahu's speech, so that would be a separate subject. If I see something, I'm going to watch the whole speech, and if there's something worth commenting on, then I will comment on it in my next thought. But for now, thanks for stopping by. If you could subscribe, that would really be great. Comments always welcome below the video in the comment section. Share this video with anyone you think would benefit from it. But most of all, come back and see me again. I would love to see all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.